Hi, and welcome back. This is episode two, or you can say Prehistory Part Two. Coach Bowman, World History 1 and Pre AP World History teacher. We will continue our conversation about prehistory. Before we start, I want to kind of recap what we discussed last week. Last week, we talked about the beginning of early human migration. We also discussed the development of the Paleolithic age and its characteristics, as well as the Neolithic age and its characteristics as well. So, this week we will continue on and discuss prehistory further. Please make sure you have your notes ready and fill them in as we go through this PowerPoint presentation. How do we know about the Paleolithic and Neolithic age? Is because of these individuals known as archaeologists. As a kid growing up, one of my favorite movies, as you see there to the right, was the Indiana Jones series. It's still one of my favorites. However, Hollywood has glorified the role of an archaeologist. Treasure is not always where the X is found on the map. And so it's definitely misleading. However, it's still fun to watch. So, what is an archaeologist? Archaeologists, they continue to find and interpret evidence to help us understand the lives of our early ancestors. They study past cultures and analyze human remains that have been found, pieces of what's left over of settlements, as well as artifacts and fossils to help fill in the gaps of that mysterious puzzle of our early ancestors. So, what are artifacts and what are fossils? Artifacts are items that are made by human hands. So, for instance, objects like jewelry, what we think of as jewelry today, is definitely a piece of our culture. It's a piece of history. It's artifacts. Fossils are items that are made by nature. Shark's teeth found at the beach, that's a fossil. If you take that shark's tooth and make it into a necklace, it then becomes an artifact. If you have ever seen a powder horn used for black powder hunting, and it's made out of some type of horn or actual antler, then that was a fossil, but it was made into something different with human hands, so it now becomes an artifact. So, rule of thumb is humans make art. You see the word art right there in the word artifact. So, humans make artifacts. Fossils are nature. One of the things that archaeologists use to determine the age of an object is the test known as carbon dating or carbon 14 dating. Archaeologists use the chemicals in the once living object to determine the age of it. Again, the object had to be living at one point. So if it is metal, then it definitely wasn't living. So it's kind of hard to tell the age of it. However, if it is some type of artifact or fossil that possibly like a bear claw necklace or something of that nature that has a piece that was living, you can use carbon dating to determine the age. This image here is an archaeological site. You can see that you have a lot of broken pieces of pottery, as well as you see there in the foreground, down towards the bottom of the picture, what looks like skeletal remains, and the phrase that people tend to use a lot is another man's one man's trash is another man's treasure. And in the world of archaeology, this is the truth. Determining certain things based on what they call trash heaps can and have led to new discoveries about different cultures. Sometimes modern need for building, for expansion of roads, archaeologists have to get called in. As you see here, the construction site there has discovered that the land that they're building upon has some sort of historical findings in it. And when this does occur, archaeological team has to come out and determine the significance of this find. Sometimes it's been very disappointing to the contractor and the building company, and they have to completely do away with the project. Other times, they've been able to preserve the area and continue the work around it. My wife and I have had the pleasure of joining a team from UVA at Monticello in Charlottesville on an excavation. We did this a couple summers ago. There I am on the top picture on the right, digging. It's not digging down, but just skimming the surface. We found some pretty interesting things I'll show you here later on in the presentation. But what exactly is an excavation? An excavation is basically just a dig. Scientists, archaeologists have determined a certain area. They come in, they look at old maps, reference points to determine the significance of a location, and then they systematically start to remove the dirt from that location, hoping to find any historical evidence such as fossils and artifacts, I should say. Once those items have been found, the dirt then is put back in its place to try and keep the area looking undisturbed as much as possible. Once the item has been located, the location has been determined, I should say, for the dig to begin. They start to what's called gritting it out. And on this image here, you can kind of see a little string kind of boxing out this area. This was the orange area, as you can see with the orange tape on the buckets as well as on the shovel. This was the area in which we were to dig. Once items have been found, the depth of their location and where in the grid is reported, photographed, and then the preservation process begins, as you can see there to the left. Here are some pieces that were found. I did happen to find some porcelain ware. My wife found what's called wrought nails, which is down here in the bottom left in the location where we were. And these are some other items that have been discovered throughout that area at Monticello. Pretty fascinating stuff. So one of the things about an excavation is the use of what's called strata. Strata are the layers of dirt that helps determine the age of an object. As you can see on the right, this is a very well dug out excavation. And you can see the different layers in the dirt. Kind of reminds me of a cake, a layered cake here. And the idea behind strata, use of strata, is that the deeper the object is found, the older the object is. So if we find something up close to the surface, it could be anywhere from something more modern to go back 100, possibly 150 years. And as you go deeper, the further back in time the object might be. One of the most interesting discoveries is known as the Iceman. And then you can see my pun there, one cool discovery. So back in 1991, some hikers going across the Alps in northern Italy came across a body that was partially buried in the snow. Apparently, it was a warmer winter, and they did not have a lot of snow that year. So some of the snow had started to melt, exposing the corpse. And upon further investigation, they discovered that the remains was of a male from the Neolithic period. And as you can see in the top right image up here, there are several items that the cold environment helped to preserve. They discovered different tools and weapons. He had a copper axe with him as well. And the bottom right is what truly remained of him. Kind of looks like a big old raisin to me, but definitely very well preserved. They have discovered body markings, such as what we would call today tattoos, on him in different locations. They have determined that he was shot by an arrow in his back, and when he fell forward, his left arm crossed in front of him, and due to the cold temperatures, he froze in that position. So as you can see here, this is this picture here in the middle of the mannequin. It's kind of a representation of what he would have looked like. I believe, if I remember correctly, this is in the National History Museum in the Smithsonian at Washington, D.C. But the Iceman was able to give us a lot more information, and that is, to me, one of the most important things about this discovery is with new discoveries from excavations, we tend to not necessarily rewrite history, but we are able to clarify or make better connections or make better what's the best way to put it? Not have better knowledge of that time period. Some ongoing archaeological digs throughout the world. One of my favorites is this very first one, Stonehenge. Stonehenge is still being discovered. There are still things that we are learning about this area, and that is in England, in northwestern Europe. Another site is in Aleppo. This is in Syria, which is in the eastern Mediterranean region. Another is Jericho, which is found in modern day Israel in, again, the eastern Mediterranean region. And then Katal Hoyuk, which is a small site found in southern Turkey. At the bottom of your note packet, you will see this map. What I'd like for you to do is pause the video and do the best you can to locate on this map the 4 archaeological sites. So please pause now, and once you have found those 4, locate them on this map using the first letter of each location. S for Stonehenge, C for Katal Hoyuk, A for Aleppo, and J for Jericho. Please pause now and locate those archaeological sites on your map. Hopefully you were able to find those locations. Here they are here. You have the S in England for Stonehenge. You have the C for Katal Hoyuk in southern Turkey. A for Aleppo in Syria. And J for Jericho in Israel. One of the things I want to point out to you, hopefully you're paying attention to this, is this part of the Mediterranean Sea right here kind of forms the shape of a J. This is going to be very important later on. There's a lot of things that happen in this bottom right area of the coast of the Mediterranean Sea. We have Jericho first. This will be later on the home of the Jews, also known as the Hebrews. This will also be where the city of Jerusalem is located, as well as the river known as the Jordan River. So this area has a lot of J's to it. Not sure exactly why this works the way it does, but right here again, you have a lot of J's in that bottom right area of the Mediterranean Sea. So let's talk about these archaeological sites. Stonehenge. There's the famous picture of Stonehenge. Again, not exactly sure why it was created. There's a lot of different theories out there, ranging from a calendar to a place of worship to an alien landing pad. So it's wide open as to the purpose of this prehistoric settlement. Again, the site is in England, and then we have found evidence that it dates back to the Neolithic age, and we also have evidence of it ending in the Bronze. Aleppo and Jericho can be found here in what is known as the Fertile Crescent region, which is something that we'll talk a little bit further about next week. It is an area that stretches from what is today the Persian Gulf, all the way around to the Mediterranean coast. Here is an image of what's left of the ancient site Aleppo. As you can see, it's a very fortified location, up high, easy to see enemies coming, easy to defend. So it's an ideal location for a civilization to begin. Here is Jericho, which dates back to biblical times. You have the painting there of Israelites marching around the city of Jericho, banging on their drums, playing their trumpets for the walls of Jericho to come tumbling down. And here you have on the right the modern image of the archaeological dig. Last and not least, Catalhoyuk. Not a whole lot left, as you can see in that image there. But again, we have found evidence. I was a part of it. There has been evidence dating back to the Neolithic period. And again, the location is in southern Turkey. And Turkey will be called Anatolia as well as Asia Minor throughout this class, as well as throughout history. So that concludes our notes for Prehistory Part 2. Next week, we will be talking about the early River Valley civilizations, locations of Mesopotamia, as well as Egypt. We will also be discussing the beginnings of steady governments, as well as the first organized religion. Please feel free to watch this again and make sure you have your notes completed and turned in by next Sunday. I appreciate your time. Thank you for all your hard work. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me, bowmanben@ameliaschools.com. Be safe and see you next week.